A pleasant good morning to everybody. Hello, Bill Bixby. Hello, Jamie. Hello, Heldy. Hope everyone is having a great start to their. Today is Tuesday? Tuesday. Today is Tuesday. Hope everyone's having a great start to their Tuesday. We've got a fun one here today. Spent this morning looking at all 32 teams and picking out the biggest impact rookie for all 32 of them. I will tell you that I was concerned going into the exercise that we were going to have more crossover with the original list, which was my favorite pick for all 32 teams. And I will run the math one more time, but there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 teams that had a different player on the impact rookie list than they did on the favorite picks list. So 20 of them were different. So there are 12 overlaps, but there are 20 differences, which I was very, very happy with, and a couple of teams that I didn't really love the player that I selected, and so we will leave it up for debate. And there are a couple of teams that I think you could have picked a couple of different players, and we can have those conversations as well. So looking forward to this. And again, this is just for how impactful I think they can be in year one. Right? Is there a role or a spot for them? Like some of these rookies are more long-term projections. Some of these rookies are going to be part of rotations. That's going to make it a little bit more unlikely that they can have bigger year one impact. So all of that is taken into account here when doing this. And so I'm hopeful that this causes some debate. It causes some conversation. And we have a lot of fun. So how many on the list were not first round picks? That's a great question, Sportsnet. Let me very quickly look. That's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, that's 6, that's 7, that is 8, 9, 10. 10 of them were, 10 of the new ones were not first round picks. 11, 12 in total. 12 in total were not first-round picks. Hello, Tuttle. 12 in total were not first-round picks. 10 of them were differences from the first list. So, all right, folks, let me just take a sip of water here and make sure everything's tweeted out, and we will get started. Okay, so I am all ready to go here. We will switch to the big screen. Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday to you. So, just to quickly show you, this was our original list. These were my favorite picks from the 2023 NFL Draft. Okay? These were my favorite picks. Then, this list was put together this morning. The biggest impact rookie. So we've got both lists available. Both lists are handy. The depth charts are available on the other screen. And we're doing these in the same order that we did the other ones. I'm going by the ESPN DraftCast, and it's by abbreviation of team. That is the order that I did this in. So I don't want to hear any arguments about, putting Las Vegas where I put them in the list like we had last time. I'm going in alphabetical order based on the team abbreviation on ESPN because that's how I put it together originally when doing this list. So if you guys are ready, I've got my trusty water bottle here for the show. I'm going to need these typed out, please and thanks. Done, Paige. I will work on it for you. I wrote them all down here, but I will put them into a typed out list for us here at some point. So if we are all ready to go, I've got both lists handy. We can compare and contrast. We can have some fun here on the Tuesday edition of the show. So if you guys are ready, I'm ready. Let's get this thing on the road. And welcome into the Tuesday edition of the TDN Daily podcast. Chris Schubert back with you here once again on the show. Hope everybody is having a great start to their Tuesday. We've got a fun one here for you. It was last week that I did my favorite picks for all 32 teams, and for the YouTube viewers of the show, I'm showing off that list. It's been ripped out of the notebook, all 32 picks that I thought were my favorite for each team. Today, we embark on a new challenge. I have written down those same 32 teams, and I have written down 32 names. And there are the 32 names of the rookies that I think can have the biggest year one impact for their team. And I will tell you, we did the work on this. We went into it a little concerned that there would be a lot of crossover, that the picks that I thought were my favorite would also coincide with the idea of them being the biggest fits in year one. Ended up not being the case. We had 20 new names appear on the list, so only 12 crossover names from the first list to the second list, and I will tell you 12 players on this list, non-first round selections, that I think can have the biggest year one impacts. Now, a couple of disclaimers. Just because I put the player on this list doesn't mean I think that it was a good pick. Doesn't mean that I, like the pick. This is just, I think, based on the depth chart, based on the role, based on the position, that these players can have the biggest year one impacts for their teams. Because I will tell you, the pick that I made for the New York Jets, I didn't really love the pick, but I think he can have the biggest year one impact when you consider the situation that the New York Jets find themselves in at that position. So, just want to put that disclaimer out there. And again, there are a couple of teams on this list that I think you could make a case for multiple different teams, multiple different players to fit this question. But there are also a couple of teams that I had a really tough time picking out a player for. So I can't wait to have the conversation with the live YouTube chat. Can't wait to hear what you guys have to say listening to the podcast. And without further ado, let's get started, and we will start with the Arizona Cardinals. And to the live YouTube chat, instead of maybe debating whether or not Jamie and I are going to have a boxing match, you guys could maybe play along here in the show and shout out the player that you would select for this while we are having this conversation. I don't know, maybe just an idea. The chat, by the way, for the podcast listeners, they've gone into a complete sidebar about Jamie and I having a boxing match. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me how we got there. They just are there. So you guys give me some cheeky pre-show banter. Hell, we're in the show. The pre-show banter was a couple of minutes ago. We can't be doing some cheeky pre-show banter. So let's, without further ado, let's get everything started here. And we will start with the Arizona Cardinals and the player that I selected. And I will tell you, one of the teams, we just talked about them being the teams that were tough for me to pick a player. The Arizona Cardinals were one of those teams, because you look at the Arizona Cardinals depth chart, and just based on what they added very early on in this draft class, they got a lot of starters. Now, that is the state of where their roster currently sits, that they drafted a couple of starters. But the player that I selected that I think could have the biggest year one impact is a position that right now you look at the depth chart, he's not listed as a starter, but I think very quickly he's going to emerge as the best player for this group for the Arizona Cardinals. And that, to me, is B.J. Ojulari. This team desperately needs pass rush. They needed pass rush help when J.J. Watt was on the team. J.J. Watt is now gone. I think B.J. Ojulari is going to be able to beat out his competition in camp and be a major part of this edge rush. Garrett Williams could be a consideration. The concern there is how healthy is he going to be, how quickly he can get back and being in the mix. I would agree that Garrett's a great selection because, again, I don't think he's going to have a tough time beating out Antonio Hamilton or Marco Wilson to be the starter there in Arizona. But pass rush, getting after the quarterback, it is a very, very important thing. It's something that the Cardinals need very, very desperately. And so, to me, I think there's a bigger path for B.J. Ojulari to have a bigger impact in year one. The reason why I didn't pick Paris Johnson, for anybody wondering, the idea in year one is for him to potentially play left guard, and I don't know how much of an impact he can have at left guard. If he was playing right tackle in year one, maybe he would have a stronger consideration, and maybe ultimately he will play right tackle by the time we get to the start of the season. But currently it feels like the idea is for him to play left guard, so I couldn't necessarily pick him to be the biggest year one impact player on the interior at guard. Jamie points out that the best thing Arizona did was get Houston's 2024 first-round pick. I'd agree with that, but when we talk about this draft class and who I think can have the biggest year one impact, we're going with B.J. Ojulari. The Atlanta Falcons up next, and this one, I tried. I tried to get there, everybody. I tried to not go chalk. I tried not to go with what is the clear and obvious answer here, but at the end of the day, you use a top 8 pick on a running back. The biggest impact rookie for the Atlanta Falcons is going to be Bijan Robinson, right? That just has to be the answer. Now, I will caution against this idea that some people have that this is going to be completely Bijan's team. He's going to get the overwhelming majority of the workload, and they're just going to run him into the ground like Derrick Henry was used in Tennessee. Tyler Algier is a very nice complementary piece to this Atlanta Falcons running game. And you invest a top 8 pick in a running back, you want to do everything you can to balance utilizing a talent like Bijan while also keeping him healthy and keeping him upright. So I don't know if this is going to be a massive split in terms of the workload. Do I think Bijan gets the majority? Absolutely. Do I think he gets more than probably 60 to 65%? Yes. But I think Tyler Algier is going to be able to carve out a lot of carries in this backfield because we know how Arthur Smith likes to run his offense. We know that he likes to run the football. And I think there's going to be a role for Tyler Algier. He was pretty good last year for this team. So, again, Bijan's the clear pick here, but I didn't want to make it seem that I think Bijan Robinson is going to get 95% of the carries there in this Atlanta offense. I think he's going to get the overwhelming majority, and the way that they have the offensive identity for this team, volume, and Bijan's going to get a lot of the volume. Baltimore, another team that I thought was very, very easy to pick for. You sign Lamar Jackson. Priority number 1, 2, 3, and 4 is get Lamar Jackson more pass-catching options. You sign Odell Beckham Jr., but we are picking Zay Flowers here as well. Again, a very easy selection here. You invest a top draft pick into Zay Flowers. We know that is the major overhaul that this offense needs. We know that they're bringing a new offensive voice there in Baltimore. Greg Roman no longer the offensive coordinator there. You think that that's going to be able to help to unlock this offense. They're not going to be as run-happy with Todd Monken. They're still going to have a run game. They're still going to run it with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards in the backfield and run it with Lamar like we know they will. But you got Odell Beckham Jr., you've got Rashad Bateman, you need that third wide receiver option, and I think Zay Flowers is primed to take, to win out against James Prochet, Nelson Aguilar, and Devin Duvernay. Those are great depth options, but I think there's a lot of opportunity here for Zay Flowers. Again, Rashad Bateman's health is obviously a question mark. Odell Beckham Jr., how much can you rely on him in his first year back? Again, Odell's a nice piece, but I think there's opportunity here, and so I think Zay's going to be able to have an impact right away for the Baltimore Ravens. And again, YouTube chat, stop me if there's a team, a pick that you don't like that we want to discuss. Would love to pull up the depth chart and have this conversation. I think these first couple are pretty easy and are pretty obvious of who the pick should be. And even with Arizona, it's one of two players, right, that I think is pretty likely. Buffalo. I will say I had a hard time with Buffalo, not because I didn't want to pick Dalton Kincaid. And that's who I ended up picking, by the way. Dalton Kincaid was the selection for the Buffalo Bills. But I looked at this, and I asked myself the question of, they've got Dawson Knox on this team. Are they going to go with a lot of 12 personnel to get Kincaid and Knox on the field at the same time? Because if they're going to do that, they're going to make that adjustment, then I can get there being Kincaid. But then you look at the depth chart, and you think to yourself, and I'm pulling it up here. I had the Ravens depth chart open for that previous team. You look at O'Cyrus Torrence, and you say, well, could he beat out Ryan Bates to be the starting right guard for this team? Certainly could. And so my heart is saying Dalton Kincaid because I think he's the better talent. My head is saying O'Cyrus Torrence. But do you use a first-round pick on a tight end, a position that you already had a major player in, if you're just not going to be able to find a way to use him? So that was the circle of logic that I just constantly walk myself in. I went with Dalton Kincaid. I think it could be O'Cyrus Torrence. And Jamie kind of echoed my sentiments in the chat saying it better be Kincaid, but I think it may be Torrence. So I'm going to pick Kincaid because I think he's the more talented player. I think they wouldn't have utilized the first round pick on him and not found a way to use him. So I'm going to pick Kincaid, but I don't love it. It's the first one that I don't love. Heldy says we can just skip Carolina. It's Bryce Young. They took a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick. The biggest impact year 1 rookie is going to be the quarterback that is going to play for them, and we're going to learn whether or not he's the franchise for them moving forward. So that is what we're doing with Carolina. Hopefully that is agreeable with everybody in the chat. As long as everybody's okay with that, we're just going to move on with Bryce Young being the selection for Carolina. The Chicago Bears. It's not sexy, but it's darn all right. Because keeping Justin Fields upright is priority numero uno, dos, and tres for this football team. They need to protect the quarterback. They dropped back the 19th fewest times in the National Football League last year, I think the stat was, and Justin Fields still got sacked the most. So the protection of the offensive line and being able to keep Justin Fields upright so he can be the quarterback that people expect him to be. The hype train for Justin Fields for 2023 is leaving the station here in a big way. If that hype train is going to come to fruition, if we are going to see the Justin Fields that everybody thinks we're going to see in 2023, there are people who think he's the second best quarterback in the NFC. There are people who have him in top 10 lists. I mean, the hype train has left the station for Justin Fields. If that is going to come to pass, keeping him upright is priority number one. It has to happen. So Darnell Wright, the biggest impact rookie for the Chicago Bears, because I think he's going to do a good job in being able to do that. The Cincinnati Bengals, a lot of options here, I think. This was one of the teams that I struggled with because they've got 3 players, I think, that they selected that could potentially see a lot of the field in year one. I ended up selecting. Now, I will tell you, I consider DJ Turner. I will tell you the other player I considered, Chase Brown, because I think if the team does choose to move on from Joe Mixon, we're doing the likely post-June 1 cuts, a surprise June 1 cut show later this week, might be as early as tomorrow. Chase Brown was an option. I consider DJ Turner. I know this team's got Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard. I think Myles Murphy can have a major impact in year one for the Cincinnati team. You got to be able to get after the quarterback, and you've got to be able to sack the quarterback. And I think Myles Murphy, as part of that rotation, is going to be able to have a bigger impact. And here's why. I look at this corner room right now, and I think DJ Turner is going to have a little bit of an uphill battle early. Chidobe Awuzie and Cam Taylor-Britt are going to be the incumbents there in that spot. Both of those guys didn't play particularly poorly last year. So I think those two guys are going to be the incumbents. Jordan Battle, I think, is going to have a tough time. I think Dax Hill's got that position on lock. I would love to give it to Chase Brown, but until I know what they're going to do with Joe Mixon, it's tough for me. If Joe Mixon wasn't on this team and they had cut him, I think Chase Brown's the easy selection. So pass rush, that's the name of the game in this league. So I went Myles Murphy. I know I saw some DJ Turner love in the chat. Again, I think that's a fair option, and I think Chase Brown would be my number 2 because I really think there's an opportunity for him to be the starter if they move on from Joe Mixon there in Cincinnati. The Cleveland Browns, a team that didn't start picking until the 3rd round, so you've really got to go deep into this draft class to see what the depth looks like. I went Siaki Ika for the Cleveland Browns. They have needed help on the interior of their defensive line. They've got Dalvin Tomlinson there currently. I think Siaki Ika can carve out a role for himself in year one. Cam Mitchell got some shout from Jamie. Martin Emerson and Denzel Ward in that corner room, that's tough. Heldy, Cedric Tillman, I can't get there. Here's why I can't get there. They've got Amari Cooper, who proved to everybody he's a number 1. Donovan Peoples-Jones had a great season. Elijah Moore they just traded for. Those are the 3 wide receivers they're going to roll with. Cedric Tillman, wide receiver 4, and he's in a battle with Marquise Goodwin and David Bell. So I can't really get there with Cedric Tillman. I thought about it. He was their first pick, and so you assume that there's going to be a role for him, but they traded a draft pick to get Elijah Moore. Amari Cooper was their true wide receiver 1, and Donovan Peoples-Jones had a good year last year. So for me, it was just tough to see where Cedric Tillman, who is taking snaps from Cedric Tillman. I agree, Heldy. Their class isn't very impactful. I think they got some help. DeJuan Jones, a good long-term answer for them at tackle, but I don't think he's going to play a lot in year one. Again, we talked about Cedric Tillman. Isaiah McGuire is a nice flyer for some pass rush depth. Cameron Mitchell, I think, is a depth option at corner. So I went with Siaki Ika. I think their class is more long-term than anything else. Makes some sense as impactful rookies. The Dallas Cowboys. This is another crossover. It's the same selection that I made for them in my favorite picks series. You could convince me Luke Schoonmaker if you wanted to. But to me, this has to be Mazi Smith. They have been looking for a run stopper in the interior of their defense, and they invested a first-round pick into Mazi Smith. He is going to be the biggest impact rookie for this team because they are just going to cement him in the middle of the Dan Quinn defense, and they're going to allow him to wreak havoc. That is what they are going to ask him to do. So Mazi Smith, the clear option here for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to ask the chat because I wrote a name down. What do you want to do with the Denver Broncos? What player would you like to put here? I'll wait. I'm gonna keep the awkward pause in the podcast because figuring out the biggest impact rookie for the Denver Broncos, I don't know what to do. Heldy, that's what I did. I put Drew Sanders' name down because the same conversation we had about Cedric Tillman, I think you could say the same thing about Marvin Mims. And I'm gonna pull it up the depth chart so that we can emphasize this point. They've got Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and Tim Patrick. Those are their 3 starting players at wide receiver. I don't see Marvin Mims cracking that list. Drew Sanders can be a part of a linebacker rotation and get on the field, I think, easier and more regularly than Marvin Mims can. And I think Drew Sanders is a better player than Marvin Mims. So I think he's going to be able to find his way on the field easier than Marvin Mims will. And Heldy says, I think it's just best player equals most impact. Yeah, in some of these cases it is. The Detroit Lions. And I will tell you, my favorite pick for the Detroit Lions was Brian Branch. It is not the selection that I made here. I did not take Brian Branch. Jamison Williams, going to be suspended for the first 6 weeks. We used the top 12 pick on this guy. The biggest year one impact rookie in Ben Johnson's offense. Running back, Jahmyr Gibbs. Jamie, don't be a contrarian in the chat. No, Tuttle, don't do this. Don't do this with Jack Campbell. Don't do this. Jack Campbell's a nice player. But you want to talk about a guy that's going to be able to have the biggest year one impact. And I will tell everybody, for those listening to this show and have not listened to today's prospects and props, Jamie and I are on opposite sides of the fence on Jahmyr Gibbs and whether or not he is going to be the starting running back for the Detroit Lions in 2023. Jamie is steadfast that they paid David Montgomery and he's going to be the guy. I think you'll use a top 12 pick on Jahmyr Gibbs. They're going to use him all over the place. We are still refining the parameters of the bet because we want to be able to properly do this, but we're worried that because they're going to use Jahmyr Gibbs all over the place, that could help me, but we don't want to diminish what Jahmyr Gibbs is doing elsewhere. So we're working on the parameters of this bet, but Jamie and I are in complete disagreement on what Jahmyr Gibbs' place on the depth chart is going to be at running back. I think he's going to be the starter, and so to me, he's going to have the biggest impact. I know Chris is dreading saying this next team, but I promise I will not say his name today. You know, Jamie, we're working on it. So Jahmyr Gibbs is a selection for me at Detroit. We get to the Green Bay Packers. Heldy, I'm not going to select Sean Clifford as the biggest year one impact rookie for the Green Bay Packers. I apologize in advance. I will tell you, I think I went with a surprising name here. Janelle says Van Ness, Musgrave, and Reed, all three might be day one starters. I will tell you, Janelle, I picked one of those three names. Heldy, Jamie, you got it correct. I selected Jaden Reed as my answer here for the Green Bay Packers. I think he slots in, pun intended, as the starting slot wide receiver for this team. They've got Christian Watson. I think after that, there's a big conversation of who the true wide receiver 2 on this team is going to be. I think there's a role for Jaden Reed, but you got Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Grant Dubose, and Samori Toure that are kind of battling it out for those other two spots. I think Jaden Reed's going to slot right in, he's one of the better receivers that they have. And then I think the rest of those guys are going to, battle it out to be the wide receiver 3 for this team. I think Luke Musgrave's going to be the starting tight end, but they've also got Tucker Kraft. So I'm a little concerned about how they're going to utilize both of those guys. And Lucas Van Ness, I think, is going to be a major starter for them and a major contributor. But for me, the guy that I think has the most immediate way to get on the field and I think have the biggest impact in a room that is open and rich for some opportunity, Jaden Reed was the selection for me at Green Bay. Okay, folks, for the Houston Texans, we're selecting C.J. Stroud. Does anybody have any problems with that? We're going to select C.J. Stroud for the Houston Texans. And then for the Indianapolis Colts, we're going to select Anthony Richardson. We're going to pick the two quarterbacks as the biggest year one impact rookies for their teams. Is everybody okay with that? Is everybody okay with picking the two quarterbacks that are more than likely going to see the majority of the time this season as the biggest impact rookie for their team? Is everybody okay with that? Is everybody okay with that? Can we continue on here? We've picked the quarterbacks for the three teams that took quarterbacks in the first round. As long as that's okay with everybody, we're just going to move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I thought this one was pretty easy. I tried to convince myself of a different name, but it's Anton Harrison, right? There's this floating idea of a Cam Robinson suspension and how he could be out for upwards of, 6 games would be the minimum suspension for what is being rumored there. Anton Harrison is a draft selection that would immediately slot in. So I think he has the bigger path to getting on the field, and he's going to be in the most impactful position, being the left tackle for this football team. So for me, it's Anton Harrison, and there's really no bones about it. I think it's pretty simple. So I went Anton Harrison for the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Kansas City Chiefs. I debated this. By the way, speaking of the Kansas City Chiefs, completely unrelated to what we are discussing here on the show today, but did we see the news from Andy Reid that Donovan Smith is going to be the starting left tackle and that they are moving Jawan Taylor to right tackle? I asked the question of the chat, is this the shortest lived reign as a starting left tackle for a team? They signed Jawan Taylor to be the left tackle, and 2 months later, he's now not their starting left tackle after not doing a single thing for them? He didn't play poorly. They just moved him. after signing Donovan Smith in free agency. Felix is a pick in the chat. Nick Jones, another selection in the chat. I went with neither of those names, Heldy. I didn't go with either of those names. I went, and I know people are going to point out the rest of the room. They're going to point out this group. I went with Rashee Rice. And I know they've got Sky Moore. I know they've got Kadarius Toney. I know they've got Marquez Valdez-Scantling. But none of those guys, I think, are so head and shoulders better than Rashee Rice that he can't carve out a role and beat one of those guys out to fit into this offense. We know how this offense likes to run. We know what they like to do. They're going to pass the football. They're going to utilize a ton of guys. It's not like Sky Moore has carved out himself as an established wide receiver. It's not like Kadarius Toney has carved out a role as an established receiver in this offense. I know he had a great Super Bowl for them, but again, it's not like he's carved out this massive role like Tyreek Hill did, like Travis Kelce currently has. That role is not carved out for any of these three guys. I think there's an opportunity here for Rashee Rice to make the biggest impact here, so that was my selection. Los Angeles Chargers. We will keep the theme of wide receivers going here. I selected Quentin Johnston. They need another receiver for this offense. They need a true number two. Keenan Allen getting a little bit older. Jamie, I wanted to pick Dion Henley. I really did. But I think Quentin Johnston is immediately the starter opposite of Mike Williams. I think those are your two outside guys. Keenan Allen is in the slot, right? I think that's the way you organize this. And so to me, I think he's going to immediately be on the field and being able to be super productive. I would love to pick Dion Henley. It's an honorable mention in a big way. But to me, Quentin Johnston, that guy. Appreciate Jamie for saying that Las Vegas comes before Los Angeles. I really appreciate that. The Los Angeles Rams. Now, Jamie Eisner knows who I'm picking here. Some people in the chat who were a part of Overreaction Monday on the TDN Premium Discord know who my selection is for the Los Angeles Rams. Biggest impact rookie for year one. Because I think this gentleman is the wide receiver 2 on this football team right now. They took him in the 5th round, but I think he's going to be the wide receiver 2 on this football team. Puka Nacua is my pick for the biggest impact rookie in year one for the Los Angeles Rams. They've got Cooper Kupp, but you are not, miss me with Van Jefferson. Guy's been inconsistent, wasn't healthy last year. Puka Nacua, talent-wise, I think is the second best wide receiver on this football team, and I think he is going to immediately be a starter and a contributor for this team. As long as Matt Stafford can stay healthy, and that's a big question mark, I think Puka Nacua is going to be able to carve out a very, very good role for himself in year one. So Puka Nacua, the selection for the Los Angeles Rams. Now we get to the Las Vegas Raiders. I see Michael Mayer, Darren Waller replacement there in Las Vegas. I don't know if everybody knows that, but Michael Mayer selected to be the Darren Waller replacement. Not the selection for me here. I went Tyree Wilson. We got to get after the quarterback. We got to get after Justin Herbert. We got to get after Patrick Mahomes. And I'm sorry. I can look at a depth chart. And do you know who Tyree Wilson is slotted behind on the depth chart for the Las Vegas Raiders? Does anybody know the answer to this question? Does anybody truly know? Who is he currently behind? And I'm going to look up his stats from last year just to really emphasize the point here. Do you know who Tyree Wilson's going to have to beat out in order to take over snaps here for this team? It's Chandler Jones. It's Chandler Jones who he has to beat out. Does anybody know what Chandler Jones did last year? 4.5 sacks. Didn't really play all that great. Kind of was missing on the field at times. Played in 14 games. Tyree Wilson could beat out Chandler Jones. Chandler Jones not the player that he was all those years ago in Arizona, running all over the place. Sacks, causing mayhem. 19 sacks one year, 13 sacks. Not that guy anymore. Tyree Wilson, the biggest impact rookie for the Las Vegas Raiders. The Miami Dolphins, the next team up for us here. And I will say this is probably the pick that a motion could be filed against the show for us to change an answer here. Now they only have 4 picks. You can only pick from Cam Smith, Devon Achane, Elijah Higgins, and Ryan Hayes. That's it. That's all you can pick from. Jamie Eisner says Cam Smith by default. I'm sorry, Jamie, I can't do it. Biggest year one impact? We got Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey. I can't get there. I will tell you, we know how Mike McDaniel, off of that San Francisco 49ers tree, likes to utilize his running backs. We know that Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, not the epitome of health. So you're talking biggest year one impact. Long term, Cam Smith's the answer here. He's the answer. Cam Smith's the answer if we're thinking long term. But you want me to tell you who's going to have the biggest year one impact this year for this team? Give me Devon Achane. Again, we know how this team utilizes its running backs. We know that there's some health questions here. Cam Smith's not going to be able to take snaps away from Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey. He's just not going to be able to do it. So we are going to select Devon Achane here as the selection here. He's not running. He's going to be running back 3 for this team. At worst, he's running back 3. So Devon Achane, the biggest year one impact rookie for Miami. Again, I can't get there with Cam Smith, so I have to go Devon Achane. As opposed to, thank you, Heldy. We're taking what, the 4th best corner option? Maybe he's CB3? CB3 or RB3. Which team utilizes 47 running backs during a season? Miami does. So we'll go with Devon Achane. The Minnesota Vikings, next up on this list. These next two guys, it's the same as the list that we did with my favorite picks. It's Jordan Addison for Minnesota, and it's Christian Gonzalez for the New England Patriots. Christian Gonzalez immediately, probably the best corner on the New England Patriots, immediately a starting quarterback for the New England Patriots. And for Minnesota, I consider Mekhi Blackman, Jamie. I will tell you, I did consider him because that corner room is very different than it was a year ago. But we don't have Adam Thielen anymore. We have a pass-happy offense here in Minnesota. We've got Justin Jefferson. He's going to get a lot of attention. I think Jordan Addison's going to be able to do really well. So Jordan Addison, but I would also consider Mekhi Blackman as an option as well. The New Orleans Saints, the next team up. I think this guy is going to be the starter at this position. I think this guy fell down the board a little bit because didn't have a very productive season, but had a lot going on. Behind the scenes that he was dealing with. And we heard about the things that this guy was dealing with his sister. I picked Brian Brzee here with the guy that I think can have the biggest impact because I think he fell here because he had a disappointing 2022 season, but this guy is a very good interior player, and I think he's going to be a starter, and I think he's going to be able to create havoc. Listen, Jamie, nobody loves Kendre Miller more than me, but I couldn't get there as a guy that's going to have an immediate impact. They've still got Alvin Kamara. They've got Jamal Williams. I think he's going to be able to get on the field, and I think he's going to be able to show the productivity, but for me, Brian Brzee was the easy selection there for the New Orleans Saints. The New York Giants, the next team up, and was really hard-pressed to not just select John Michael Schmitz here because I think protecting Daniel Jones up the middle through the interior is an impact. But guys, I look at this wide receiver room, and you can't convince me that Jalen Hyatt's not going to beat out some of the guys that are in this room to be a top wide receiver option for Daniel Jones in year one. You can't convince me that Jalen Hyatt can't beat out Isaiah Hodgins. You're not going to convince me that he can't beat out Wan'Dale Robinson or Sterling Shepard or Paris Campbell or Darius Slayton to get on the field and be an impact player for this team in this offense. They desperately need contributors on offense at the wide receiver position. I think Jalen Hyatt can provide that for them. So I picked Jalen Hyatt. The New York Jets, biggest impact rookie in year one for the New York Jets. Let's see. Get your predictions in the chat for what I did here. I kind of teased it. Jamie, you joke. That is the exact name I wrote down for the New York Jets. Israel Abanikanda. That is the pick that I made for the biggest impact rookie for the New York Jets in year one. Again, I didn't say I liked all these picks. I didn't say that the name I wrote down were picks that I loved. That picks are my favorite. But Breece Hall is going to miss some time. Michael Carter wasn't very good in the second half of last year. I think Israel Abanikanda could be, for at least the first 6 to 8 weeks, however long Breece Hall is going to be out, I think Israel Abanikanda is going to be the starting running back for the New York Jets. And so, with that in mind, he's going to be able to have an impact. No, Jamie, you can't throw the tomato at me. I can talk trash about not liking the pick, but also understand what they were doing. And again, long term, I don't understand it. But for year one, for what they are trying to do, Israel Abanikanda is going to be the biggest year one impact rookie. He just is. Joe Tippmann's just going to be just a figurehead of consistency there at the center position. Don't know how much of an impact he's going to have, and I don't know how much better he's going to be than Connor McGovern. And so, again, when we talk about impact, I think Israel Abanikanda, the first month or two of the season, is going to be the starting running back. So if I'm picking a guy that's going to have the most impact for this team, I'm going to pick Israel Abanikanda. The Philadelphia Eagles. Good luck with this one. Good luck picking out who the biggest impact rookie is going to be for the Philadelphia Eagles. I selected Jalen Carter because I think he's going to start right away. And that's the big thing for me. So I selected Jalen Carter. Sidney Brown's going to start, says Heldy. All right, well, we can consider that. I mean, Terrell Edmonds listed as the starter here on the depth chart that I'm looking at. I think Jalen Carter just immediately slots in next to Fletcher Cox and can cause some mayhem. But I went Jalen Carter because I think he's the better player. Pittsburgh, Broderick Jones, I think is the easy selection here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We got to protect Kenny Pickett. We're going to protect him with a good left tackle. What bigger impact can we have than being the starting left tackle for a football team as year one as a rookie? So we went with Broderick Jones there for Pittsburgh. Seattle, the Seattle Seahawks next up here. And I will tell you, you could pick either of the guys in the first round and tell me that guy's going to have an impact. I went Jackson Smith and Jigba. Tyler Lockett getting a little bit older. I think a true number 2 wide receiver option needs to emerge in this offense next to DK Metcalf. I think that can be Jackson Smith and Jigba. With Devon Witherspoon, I think the idea, I mean, they've got a pretty good corner room right now. Tariq Woolen, Defensive Rookie of the Year candidate last year. Kobe Bryant was pretty good. I think Devon Witherspoon's going to be a starter for them. But biggest year one impact, I went Jackson Smith in Jigba. San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers. Biggest year one impact rookie for the San Francisco 49ers. What does everybody think? What does everybody think the selection here, written down on my paper, the pen's right here, not making any changes, it's already been written down. The pick for the San Francisco 49ers, you're gosh darn right, Heldy, you're gosh darn right, Jamie. It's Jake Moody. We took a kicker in the 3rd round. Of course he's going to be the biggest year one impact rookie for us. Guy's going to start. Guy's going to be our starting kicker. Our season potential games are going to be won or lost because we've got a 3rd round pick kicker, Jake Moody, as our biggest year one impact. And look at the rest of this class. Tell me where any of these other guys are going to fit in and carve out a role in year one. They're not. So Jake Moody's the pick. And it's not, I'm not being ironic. I'm not trying to be funny. Jake Moody's the pick. Just makes way too much sense. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers here with this next pick. You could pick Kalijah Kancey. You could do it. And I would understand you picking Kalijah Kancey. But I went Cody Mock because I think he's going to find a way onto this starting line in some capacity inside the interior. And I think he is going to be able to contribute more to his team in year one than Kalijah Kancey is going to. So Cody Mock, the selection for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And these last two, I don't think they're sexy. They're not surprising. They are exactly what I picked as my favorite pick for each team. It's Peter Skoronski for the Tennessee Titans because I think he's going to slot in somewhere along this offensive line and provide them a spark there. Again, Will Levis, don't even know if he's going to see the field in year one. Tajay Spears, sharing a workload with Derrick Henry. We know the injury profile there, so there's concerns. After that, maybe you take Josh Wiley, but again, biggest impact, Peter Skoronski. And for the Washington Commanders, it's Emmanuel Forbes. I think he slots in as a starting corner for them right away. Jamie says that he would argue Stromberg. Okay, that's consider. Jartavius Martin's probably a starter as well for Washington in year one, so that's somebody else that you could give some consideration to. But I went with Emmanuel Forbes. So I mean, you got 3 guys that could potentially be starters for Washington that you would be considering there. But I went with Emmanuel Forbes, the guy they took the earliest in the draft. But I would consider anybody else. So that's it. Those are all 32 picks for me, that the biggest impact rookie for their respective teams. Like I mentioned, 20 players different from the list of my favorite picks series, and only I think it was 12 in total, not first round selections, that ultimately made this list. So a fun little exercise here on a Tuesday as we get ready for, training camp. It is just around the corner. I know it may feel like it's a little bit away, but it is just around the corner, and we're going to start seeing these rookies out there contributing for their football teams very, very soon. Appreciate everybody making this show a part of their day. Please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, share the show with a friend. Join us on the YouTube version of the show, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We hang out over there. You get to see the video version of the show. You get to be a part of the show. You heard me shout out everybody in the chat that is a part of the show. And then again, we've got the post-show shenanigans where we talk about all sorts of different stuff there that you get to take part in when you are over on the YouTube version of the show. So check that out as well. You can hang out with us live or you can watch it after the fact. It's available on the Draft Network YouTube channel as well. So appreciate everybody making this show a part of their day. We'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Okay. Show's in the books. I need to type this list up now. What do we want to talk about in the post-show shenanigans? We want to talk about these tampering but not tampering charges against the Washington Commanders that are really weird. Because now it appears like there was never any contact, and I have no idea what Jim Irsay was complaining about. We can talk about that. Defend your Izzy pick, you flip-flopper. There's not a flip-flop about it. I don't like the pick. And the reason why I don't like the pick is because I think it is a pick for just 6 to 8 weeks, and it's not a pick for the long term. This conversation is not for the long term. This conversation is specifically for year one. There's no flip-flop at all. I think it's incredibly consistent with my logic. I don't think Izzy Abanikanda is on the team in 2 years. But I think if you're asking me which rookie did this team draft that is going to have the biggest impact this season, it's not Will McDonald. He's going to be part of a rotation. I don't think it's going to be Joe Tippmann because I don't know what kind of impact truly can a center really have that you're going to notice. And so, right, but I think those 6 to 8 weeks are going to be a bigger impact than what Will McDonald will do over the course of 17 weeks. I think it's going to be a bigger impact than what Joe Tippmann can do over 17 games. I think it's literally going to be a bridge to get Breece back. That could be potentially the biggest impact anybody could have on the New York Jets this season, is figuring out a running game until Breece Hall is able to come back. There's a difference. There's a difference between the short and long term starting center greater than signing the 6 weeks of a running back in rotation. I mean, it's fair. Tippmann would be the secondary option. I mean, I don't think there's anybody else that I would consider. Like I wouldn't consider Carter Warren. I wouldn't consider Zach Kuntz because I don't even know if Zach Kuntz is going to make the team. Right? It's either Izzy or Joe Tippmann. But I don't know. I think when I look at this, I think also Jamie. I think he will be, but I don't know if Tippmann's going to beat out Connor McGovern early. That's the other thing too. So I don't know if it's going to be 17 games. I think he will. But Connor might start the year. And then they might transition to Joe at some point down the road. But I mean, you could convince me that it's Tippmann. I consider Tippmann. But I think the guy that's going to be able to provide the Jets the most in year one is Izzy Abanikanda. Irsay responding to a random media report that came out. Yes, that's exactly what happened. That was pretty wild. Pretty crazy stuff. And it clearly didn't mean anything. Clearly didn't happen. But very, very interesting. All right, everybody. Stenson will start 9 games this year. Oh, Heldy, what is with you and your love for just mediocre college quarterbacks, dude? We like Stenson Bennett and Sean Clifford. Who starts more games in the next 2 years? Sean Clifford. Stenson Bennett's the answer to this question. Stenson Bennett might start games this year. Haener, that wasn't an option, Tuttle. Haener wasn't an option. I would take Stetson Bennett in this conversation. Okay, last call for anything here for the show, because I got to type up this list because I believe it is going to be the content for today's TDN staff meeting, and I have to record the intro to the show for the podcast version. So last call for anything that we would like to discuss here to close out the show. 3 more shows this week. I think Thursday's the day for the surprise and post-June 1 cuts show. I'm probably going to spend all day tomorrow working on that. I did some preliminary work on it, but I'll probably that show will probably be on Thursday. I don't know what we're gonna do tomorrow, and then Friday we've got the free for all, which will probably be schedule related, depending on how that comes out, because we're kind of learning more, and some of the schedule is going to begin to leak throughout the rest of the week. And then I'm working on scheduling out, and I don't know when we're going to start it. But I'm working on scheduling out a preview series for all 32 teams, where we'll go through, key additions, key subtractions, biggest training camp battle, keys to success in 2023, what we define success in 2023 for this team. I'm working on putting that schedule together where there's 32 of them, right? So it's going to take, we do 5 shows a week. It's going to take 6+ weeks to be able to get through all 32 of those. And we do the Friday free-for-all, so it's really only 4. So working on picking the start date for that series is also, in the works. And so once we get that rolling, that'll be fun to do each and every day, kind of a preview series for all of these teams ahead of training camp. So that's what you guys can look forward to as well. So all right, guys. I hope everybody has a great rest of their Tuesday. Appreciate everybody being here. We're back again tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, hanging out here on the YouTube channel for another edition of TDN Daily. We are something in the works for Thursday for the schedule release. I think I'm going to go live for the schedule release. Jamie may or may not join me. Other members of the staff may or may not join me. So we're definitely going to be doing something on Thursday for the schedule release. We just don't know what or with whom. But I will definitely be doing something. I'll definitely be going live for the schedule release where we can overreact to the schedule coming out right away. So appreciate everybody being here. Hope everybody has a great rest of their Tuesday. I'll talk to everybody tomorrow.